All right, today we're diving into a real rabbit hole. We're going to piece together a puzzle that stretches across centuries, connecting the secret apocalyptic math of Sir Isaac Newton to the very engine that's powering modern AI. So, what's the thread that ties it all together? Let's find out. I know, it sounds like a totally bizarre question, right? But the answer, believe it or not, points to this hidden theory of reality. It's like an engine that runs on belief, and it seems to be speeding up, heading towards something we can't even begin to imagine. So, our first stop takes us back to Sir Isaac Newton. We all know him, right? The guy with the apple, gravity, physics, the father of modern science. But behind that super rational public face, there was another Newton, a man completely obsessed with finding a divine code hidden in scripture. And here's the thing, Newton himself basically put out a warning label for this work. He was adamant that prophecy wasn't some crystal ball for seeing the future. No, for him, it was a code you could only crack after things happened. It was a way of looking in the rearview mirror of history and seeing God's plan. And listen, he wasn't just dabbling in this on a rainy afternoon. The man who gave us the laws of motion spent an incredible amount of his life, we're talking years, decades even, hunched over the books of Daniel and Revelation, absolutely convinced they held a mathematical key to everything. This wasn't just guesswork. For him, it was a calculation. In one of his private notes, he starts the clock in 800 AD, the year Charlemagne gets crowned. He then adds 1260 years, a key number he pulls from the book of Daniel. And where does that land him? 2060. Not the end of the world, mind you, but a huge turning point, a major shift in the divine schedule. Okay, now hold on, because we're about to jump forward a few hundred years. We're leaving Newton's orderly, divine clockwork universe and landing in the middle of a group of thinkers who saw time not as a plan, but as a prison that needed to be hacked. So, in the late 20th century, you have this collective of philosophers and artists at Warwick University. They call themselves the CCRU. And for them, Newton's straight line of time wasn't some path to walk down, it was a cage. And they were dead set on finding a way out. This quote gets right to the heart of it. They believed that this steady, one thing after another progression of time, the very foundation of Newton's physics, was actually a kind of program that had humanity trapped. And their whole goal was to break it. So what was their crowbar for prying open the prison of time? This incredible concept they called hyperstition. You can think of it as a self-fulfilling prophecy on steroids. It's an idea, a fiction, that gets out into the world and starts to actually bend and rewrite reality to make itself true. And this is where it gets really wild. It just completely flips our whole understanding of what's real. In their model, the most powerful force in the universe isn't gravity or physics, it's a story. A really compelling story that enough people start to believe is true. So let's put these two worldviews side by side. For Newton, God's plan happens, and we try to figure it out later. It's a slow, stable process. But for Nick Land and the CCRU, our belief is the engine that makes the thing happen. The future starts to infect the past. It's not a slow loop. It's a runaway, accelerating freight train. This is temporal sorcery, not divine will. Okay, so we have Newton's clock and the CCRU's time-hacking sorcery. But what are the actual mechanics here? Well, a third group of thinkers, let's call them the Compressionists, believed they'd actually found the mathematics behind this strange new reality. This group brought together some really fascinating ideas. You had Terence McKenna's time wave math, Ralph Abraham's work with chaos theory, Rupert Sheldrake's ideas about collective memory. The great puzzle, the thing they were all wrestling with, was how do you merge all of this? Could you combine these different mathematical models into one unified theory of reality? And, crucially, in what order do you put the pieces together? But the one big idea that united all of them was this. Time doesn't just pass, it compresses. The rate of change isn't steady, it's speeding up. History is like a fractal wave of newness, where every new era is shorter, crazier, and more complex than the one before it. All right, so now we've got all the pieces on the table. We have Newton's linear timeline, we have the CCRU's hyperstitional engine, and we have the Compressionists' fractal roadmap. Let's put them all together and see what kind of machine we've just built. So here's how the model works. You start with good old-fashioned linear time. That's the road we're all on. The map of that road, showing all the crazy twists and compressions up ahead, comes from the math of the Compressionists. And what's the engine, the fuel pushing us forward faster and faster? That's hyperstition, our collective belief in fictions that literally make themselves real. And what you get is the self-reinforcing runaway feedback loop. Our tech lets us create more powerful fictions. Believing in those fictions makes change happen faster, and that insane acceleration requires even more powerful technology just to keep up. The engine is literally running away from us. So, what does this acceleration actually feel like to live inside of it? Well, according to this model, the symptoms are everywhere you look, and they all point toward the rise of a brand new kind of intelligence. Just think about it for a second. The way our shared stories are decaying, this constant scramble for new identities, this deep feeling that maybe nobody really knows who they are anymore. In this model, these aren't just random quirks of modern life. They are the direct psychological side effects of living inside this accelerating engine. And this quote just nails the danger, doesn't it? When our shared sense of self collapses, it creates a vacuum. And that vacuum can get filled by our deepest, darkest, most irrational collective fears, that collective shadow taking the wheel. So, what's the ultimate tool for managing all this chaos? For generating the fictions that keep this engine screaming forward? It's artificial intelligence. It is the ultimate hyperstitional machine because it can create perfectly believable synthetic realities, and it can manage a global system that's way too complex for any human brain to handle. And it's kind of spooky, but if you go back to that old prophetic language that Newton was so obsessed with, this role has a name: the false prophet, a power that tricks the world into adopting its system. And when you look at AI's ability to generate deepfakes, to create curated realities for each of us, to manage the entire global financial system, well, it fits the description with chilling accuracy. So, we've built the engine, we've identified its fuel, we've seen the chaos it creates. But all of this leaves us staring down one final massive question. This is the great unsolved mystery of our time. From Newton patiently trying to decode God's plan to the CCRU frantically trying to hack reality, this whole story is about trying to read the source code of the universe. But as we build an intelligence that might finally be able to read that code, we have to ask a really scary question. What if the answer it finds is something we never, ever wanted to know? That's the question at the heart of the engine. Thanks for joining me on this one.